What up, good people? Today we're going to be talking about how to come up with cool story ideas for your next short film or screenplay or even your novel. So sometimes coming up with ideas for those books, screenplays, movies, whatever, can make you want to jump off a bridge. So whether you're suffering from writer's block or you just burnt the hell out and hit a brick wall, there's a ton of different ways you can, get inspiration for that next big idea. Today, we're just going to focus on one technique, and that is using newspaper articles or news headlines as inspiration. This is one of my favorite tricks. This is how I get out of ruts all the time. And whether this inspires you to tell a true story or just sparks an idea that you can go run with is totally up to you. So let's talk about 5 popular movies that were based on magazine or newspaper articles. And from there, you can kind of go check those original articles through Google and watch the movie and just kind of connect the dots and reverse engineer things and see how they kind of put things together and how they came to, what they ended up with. Sound all right? All right, cool. So let's get right into it. Number 1, A Nightmare on Elm Street. You remember Freddy Krueger, right? Well, back in the 80s, there was this LA Times report that talked about a series of deaths that were happening in Southeast Asia to a bunch of male refugees. Exactly 130 of them to be precise. So the article went on about how this medical expert was seeking clues and, why was this happening? He was trying to find out what was the cause. And in the article, it mentioned that all 130 of those male refugees died the exact same way. They cried out in their sleep and then they died. It was just no explanation other than that. So it was a big mystery. Wes Craven got a hold of these articles and, it got his imagination running, and thus a classic movie franchise was eventually born. Number 2, American Gangster, starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. Now, I remember reading this article back when it first came out. There wasn't even a talk of a movie. And just off the article, I thought it was just a super dope concept. It was called The Return of Superfly, and it was based on the rise and fall of ex-drug kingpin Frank Lucas. Now, the article was based on Frank Lucas telling a journalist how he rose from rags to riches and had like the most powerful drug operation in the 70s that even surpassed the mafia. Even though I liked the movie, I actually liked the version that Frank Lucas gave in the article in that interview instead. I liked that a little better. It just went in a whole different direction, and it was a lot more detailed. Anyway, if you ever get around to reading that article, tell me what you think, because it's a little different than what was shown in the movie. Hollywood kind of put their standard storytelling formula and watered stuff down. But anyways, I digress. The movie turned out pretty dope anyway, and that was pretty much where they got the whole concept from. Number 3, Boogie Nights. There was a Rolling Stone article back in 1989 called The Devil in John Holmes, which ended up being the inspiration for the Paul Thomas Anderson movie on the adult film industry. Now, this is definitely one of my favorite movies starring Mark Wahlberg, and it's got some crazy stuff that kind of pops off. I never actually read the article, but I saw the movie, and it's just wild as hell. Number 4, the Fast and the Furious franchise. Now, even though we're on like part 12, 13, or 14 by now, it's often forgotten that the very first movie was actually inspired by an article from Vibe magazine back in 1998 called Racer X. The article chronicled the whole underground drag racing subculture of the late 90s. And finally, Live Free or Die Hard. This 4th installment of the Die Hard movies was pretty much heavily inspired from a 1997 article in Wired called A Farewell to Arms. In that article, they basically talked about how cyber warfare was going to be the next new version of terrorism in the future. So when you see that movie, that's pretty much what it's all based on. But that article was pretty in detail and in depth and gave me some cool ideas as well. A couple more movies that I like that get honorable mentions that were inspired by articles are Dog Day Afternoon and, of course, Argo, that Ben Affleck starred in, and I think he produced and directed that, or maybe just produced. All right, so even though you've probably heard of this technique before, I thought it just might be helpful to give you some actual examples in case you want to reverse engineer the success of any of these approaches. Maybe even go back and read some of those articles and see if you can come up with a different take or a different spin on any of those ideas. So either way, good luck, and check the description for links. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button. Peace. Talk to you next time.